so much of what's going on here. So let me see make sure I got lights right so you guys can see me. Yeah, should be good. Okay, well anyway, there's like a whole mess of topics here. You know, the first thing comes to mind, well, you know, that I'll actually bring up was something like somebody told me, I think it was my wife told me, that was like that TikTok was offering sort of this thing where if you do 40 hours a month of live streams, then it's like they're looking for content creators. They're like, okay, 40 hours a month. So I did the math. I'm like, okay, so that's basically 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's effectively like a talk show is what you'd be looking for. Like, dude, that seems like a lot, you know, that you would be asking for. That's almost a full-time job if you think about it. Hold on, move this guy back a second here. I'm gonna make a quick adjustment. There we go. There, I think that's about right. So, the delusion calculator, that was something that I wanted to talk about. There was like, so about, I don't know, like a week ago or so, something like that, I did a video where I talked about like what chicks are doing, where it's like, okay, you're going, instead of, if you're looking for a guy who can do all this stuff, who makes all this money and has also all this ability to take care of you, the challenge with that is like you're looking for like this tiny percentage of men, and then if you do the delusion calculator on it, you find out that it's like 1% or fewer. It's like 0.1% of men that meet all these criteria, because you've pretty well destroyed that in the real world. I mean, that's kind of how it works. All of that got destroyed with the idea of putting a bunch of women into the workforce, and then on top of that, flooding the country with a bunch of illegals. I saw that Trump, is talking about the idea of like there's going to be aliens. Like, well, that's pretty well confirmed. The whole country's full of them right now, and there's like between 20 and 50 million, depending on whose estimates you're listening to. So we can get rid of those anytime you want. Just make it those mass deportations. So let's see here. Hold on here. There's like a whole mess of stuff going on here. Fish Hook, good to see you again. So, no, I know what I was going to talk about. There's this dude on TikTok, right? I saw this today. He had he went to like Yale University, and he had a degree from Yale. And the thing is that he had a degree, and it wasn't like one of those studies degrees, you know, the kind of pretend degree. No, it was an actual like STEM field degree, and he can't find work, you know, with a Ivy League diploma like that. What does that tell us about the job market? It tells us the job market is complete crap. That's what it tells us, that the job market is a total lie. So that was something that I wanted to bring up also, is the job market, because the job market is a total lie from what I can tell. Freight rates haven't come up, so I mean, like just for my truck drivers, you know, that'll tune in, you guys know that, oh no, hold on a second here. There's a technical difficulty. I forgot that this thing's on a timer. There we go. Now we're back. First time I've had a technical difficulty that bad, actually. Let's see here. But yeah, so it tells us the job market is complete crap. So somebody to ask, like, what about the trades? Do I think, and I did this was a video again a couple of days ago that I did, where they said, do I think that the trades are going to flood out? I think the trades are already starting to flood out in parts of the country. It's not looking good, as demand shifts. And this is all stuff that, like, I talked about, like publicly, I talked about this stuff like almost 5 years ago, on some of my really early YT stuff. Texas is making it harder for illegals to transfer titles in their vehicles. So yeah, I mean, we'll see if that, we'll see how that works. We'll see if they find a way around it. You know, most of these folks are usually pretty good at finding ways around things, so we'll see if it holds. I'd like to see it, but I think in general it'll probably get misapplied. So I mean, not to be cynical, because just I'm a cynical douche and I always have been, but it's like, because I always find myself on the receiving end of stuff like that. Like, oh, well, hey, that's great, Axel. We have all your stuff. Now go get a note from your mom and go get a note from your doctor. And then we can do a title for, like, this is ridiculous. Because I've run into that kind of stuff with commercial vehicles, you know, for my company, where it's like, you know, you guys are making it near impossible for me to transfer a title on something. So, yeah, so we'll see how it goes. Let's see here. Long time since I saw you. Been out of the news. Yeah, no, I have actually too. I'm fooling myself by going into IBU. I don't know what IBU is. I'm sorry. I probably should know what that is, and I probably don't, or I maybe heard it called something else. Could be why car loans are collapsing. Yeah, I mean that, and also, you know, I don't know. Did you guys know this? I mean, so like I actually have a note on a car, right? I actually had it's a small loan on a car. It was, I think the total loan amount was like $15,000. And it was just, I just didn't have enough money to pay cash for it. So I did this small loan, and I made the car payment, you know, early on. And what happened is that the bank refuses to take the money out of the account to apply it to the loan until the actual due date. So that way they rack up more and more interest during that time. I'm not kidding, actually. And we're talking, and again, this is a small amount. I mean, a relatively small amount, but it's like, they're doing this, and I caught them on this. Like, okay, I see what you guys are doing. Like, this is basically just you're just juicing people for just the maximum amount of interest that you can get on all of this, as opposed to, you know, it's like, okay, yeah, I see how this is. But yeah, I think car loans are collapsing also. I think Oscar, only because, or I mean, one of them is just that the car prices aren't coming down. Like, there's nothing meeting the market. Everything just keeps going up. It's the number go up phenomena, right? Hey there to you too. Hold on here. Government is running out of money. They have a printing press, so they can't run out of money, you know, in that sense. They can just keep printing it. What they do is they'll just pass that inflation on to you guys. You, me, and everybody else get to eat all that inflation while they're going about it. It's really horrible. But yeah, that was, and in fact, there was a dude I just saw this video actually today. Like, just speaking of cars, because you reminded me of this, he was talking about the car thing, where it's like, okay, so you go to a car lot and you buy a car, and you pay up to get these ridiculous financing terms for your car, or you can gamble and spend, you know, go take $10,000 that you saved and then go buy a car and hope that it's a good car. And it's like, so that's always been a thing, even when I was a kid. For those of us that are Gen Xers, we remember this. We remember having to buy $1,000 cars, and it was like a total crapshoot as to whether or not you got a good car. But cars weren't anywhere near as complicated as they are now. Like, now it's not, your friend with a case of beer may or may not be able to fix that car, you know, unless he really knows what he's doing, or unless there's like endless amounts of YouTube videos on how to fix that car the proper way. And there's a place to fix it, because in a lot of cases, like if you live in an apartment, you're kind of screwed, because usually right in your lease it says no auto repair of any kind, you know, on apartment grounds. It'll usually say something like that. And most people don't have a garage. If you're a younger person just starting out, you may or may not have a garage that you can work on stuff like this. So I mean, like, again, my Gen Xers will echo this sentiment. You know, they'll all say the same thing. Like, yeah, when we were growing up, you know, there's always somebody who had you know, their dad had a garage, and maybe their dad was a mechanic or knew a mechanic, and you could go over to, you know, to Uncle Bill, what they always called him, and you could get your car fixed, and it was kind of a decent deal. And yeah, that's not around as much anymore, because the cars are they're too complicated. They're just so much tech for the sake of tech. So yeah, that's a big problem. But is the government running out of money? Yeah, they'll just keep printing it. Sadly, they'll create what's called top-down inflation instead of bottom-up inflation. I mean, that's the saddest thing that I've seen. AI bubble. Yeah, and of course, Yeah, it's a pretty bad one. I think, again, it runs interference for people. They get to blame AI for these so-called job losses that are out there. But it's like, no, what it is these companies are just trying to get rid of you. They're just trying to get rid of those jobs. And so this is a perfectly good scapegoat for them to use, which is to say, oh, it's AI, your job got replaced by a computer algorithm or something like that. In the meantime, it didn't get really replaced by a computer algorithm. It got replaced by, somebody in another country who's taking your job and they're just doing it remotely. Because working from home doesn't necessarily have to be working from home. Working from home can be working from home anywhere, right? You don't have to work from home here in the States. You can work from home anywhere in the world. That's how that works nowadays. And so that's not very good. It doesn't bode well for a lot of Americans, as evidenced by, like, for example, the young man with the STEM degree from Yale University. So again, a fairly prestigious university. That's the whole point, and that's the whole point of going to the prestigious universities, right? Some of you guys know what I'm talking about this. You guys who have degrees, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, especially if you're a professor. There's a few of you that follow me that are professors. You'll know what I'm referring to. The curriculum is basically the same, whether you go to a community college or you go to an Ivy League college. So in other words, if I take a tennis ball and I drop it right here and it drops to the floor, the laws of physics apply in my garage just as they apply at Yale University, just as they apply at the local community college. The laws of physics don't change between here. If they change between my garage and Yale University, there is a problem on the planet that is much bigger than we're able to deal with right now. It's way beyond all of our pay grade. But let's assume, all things being equal, that's the case. If I let go of a tennis ball here, it's going to bounce, the energy, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's how it works. So the whole point of going to the exotic universities, or these really expensive universities, is so that you get a pedigree. It's not necessarily a degree, it's a pedigree. And then you're able to get out there and go do something with this. And this kid with this, and again, like I said, I can't stress this enough. He had a STEM field degree, so not a degree in fill in the blank studies. And he was like, man, I cannot find work like anywhere. And I've applied to like 500 places. Like, it's getting pretty bad when that kind of thing happens. So when the Ivy League kids aren't getting hired, you know there's something very wrong. You're screwed, right? Let's see, did it to me again here. TikTok here. Hi, mate, in the UK. To stay up for a lot. Oh, well, welcome. Good to have you with. What's it in the UK? It's like midnight there, isn't it? You guys are like GMT -6, I think. So it's like midnight there, isn't it? Let's see here. That's right. Now they have to go on life support. Are you talking about boomers? Or are you talking about the government? Or are you talking about boomers in government that are on life support? It's like, what are we talking about here? My small property taxes on a house on 2 acre or on 2 lots is more expensive than my 3 acre. Yeah, I know mine. So property taxes. For those of you who follow me, kind of regularly, you know that I own a property up north, and it's just a few acres. It's not a huge mega estate. It's not Crawford Ranch, dude. And I bought this place recently. It hasn't even been a year, and the county has said, oh, we think it's doubled in price. It hasn't even been a year, and I just bought it, and it's like, no, and I've done nothing to it. But they're just saying, oh, we want more money. So yeah, that's the property tax problem. It's a huge issue, and it's just because all these municipalities are going broke. So hearkening back to somebody who was talking about, is the government going broke? Municipalities are definitely going broke, which is why many of them still need to have all this federal money that's coming in, which of course, if you're taking in so-called federal money, then you really don't work for the local people anymore. You work for whatever the federal government, whoever's handing you money, says to do. That's bad. That's really bad. That's really, I mean, like wars have started over stuff like that. That's really super duper bad. Let's see here. Hold on here. We drank from the hose. Yeah, lots. I still do that. I still do it. If I'm out in the yard, I still do it. They took advantage of my parents passing 2 years ago without property contested, I think is what that word's supposed to be. I think it's misspelled. It's like, I'm not trying to pick on you. I'm not doing the grammar Nazi. I'm just like, hold on here. Doggone it. So yeah, scroll through this and like TikTok. I can't keep up with anybody. You guys are too quick for me. They can tax more. It happens to me in Texas. Yeah, I know. I'm in Texas also, and that's exactly what it is. It's just I'm in Southeast Texas, and yes, it's the same problem. Let's see here. I almost want to tear down my house so I can lower the tax bill. I'm telling you, like this is the problem you get when like there's been this real issue of letting Blackstone and foreign countries buy up a bunch of property in the U.S. and artificially inflate these prices to the point of insane, to the point where they're so far beyond their utility value that nobody would ever buy. I was just having this conversation the other day with a friend of mine about the commercial real estate problem. That so many people want to own businesses. I think if I were to take a poll right now, anybody watching this, you know, if you don't already own a business, how many of you would love to own some kind of business, some kind of small business? I don't care what the business is, but you know, you wanted to own something. Well, I find that most people want to own businesses. They want to be a part of the economy from the ownership perspective. They either don't know what to do, or they don't have the capitalization to go into a business. This is a big problem, the undercapitalization. So you have a lot of companies that go out of business because they're undercapitalized. The question is, are they undercapitalized, or is everything out there so far beyond utility value? In other words, your real estate, you know, the leases that you're paying on, if you're assuming you don't own the property, but you're paying a lease on it, are all those things so far outside of reality, so far outside the market that you can't really do anything with it? And I would argue that that's actually what's happened. It's the latter of the two. It's not that you're necessarily undercapitalized. That can be a problem, but I don't think that's what it is in most cases. I think in most cases, it's that the costs to stay in business have gotten so out of control. And then of course, you know, I immediately know what I'm going to have. I'm going to have the people that say like, well, you know, what about the labor? Because you know, like, well, Axel, you're the one who pushes for these higher minimum wages and everything. Yes, I do. But that's not because I'm trying to trash small businesses. I'm a little more nuanced than that. That has to do with the currency being destroyed. So my goal, of course, and my stated mission here is the complete unconditional collapse of the U.S. dollar. I've been very clear about this right from the very beginning. That is my stated mission. Once that happens, I will go do other stuff. There's other things that I will go do, and I won't probably even bother with social media at that point. Because I mean, like, it's just I have a mission here. Not really. This isn't a fun hobby for me. As with most people, I think that if you had lots of money, would you be on social media? Probably not. Think about it. I mean, if you had $1 billion right now, would you be spending all of your time on social media? Probably not. You'd probably be spending your time in hypercars or traveling the world or doing whatever exotic kind of crap that you want to do. You wouldn't be doing social media. People do it because it's free or it's really cheap entertainment. I mean, call it what it is. I'm not saying that like billionaires don't go on social media, but much of that is just for hype. Like if you really actually had truly a bunch of money and you weren't a broke billionaire, the fake billionaires that exist nowadays, you would just go do other stuff. I mean, especially if you're creative. If you're like me, if you're even slightly creative, there's just tons of things you could be going to do. All that said, these costs get too far out of control, goes beyond the utility value of anything. So, and the analogy I love to use is, let's say you wanted to open up a business in a building, so you wanted to buy some land, build a building, and then open your bar/restaurant. I'm using that only for example purposes. I mean, it could be a machine shop, it could be any other thing. It doesn't make any difference. And so let's say that the cost of the land, the building, and everything comes to a total of $4 million. Here's the thing, if you had $4 million, you wouldn't do it. Really, I would look at you and say, you're crazy. If you have $4 million, why would you, unless this is your dream, unless this is truly something you're genuinely passionate about and you want to open up a wheel repair and tire store or something like that. I'm just throwing something around randomly. And you want to do something like that, then I would say, dude, if you had to spend that kind of money, you are probably not going to make back the return that you think you're going to make. The cost of capital doesn't support that. So now put yourself in the position that if you're like anybody, if you're like a pleb like me or anybody else, and you're like, okay, I want to start a business and go into business for myself, you're usually going to start off on the very bottom. And unless you've got a margin, like a big margin available, then you're probably not really going to survive much very long, because of course if you're paying these ridiculous inflated lease prices on your land, because you're probably not going to be buying and building, you're going to be leasing, you eventually just end up working for the bankers. That's all you end up with, is you just working to pay interest and working to pay landlords and rent seekers and all. That's all you end up with, is just something like that. And it's not profitable, which is why small business is basically doomed in the US. And of course, by the way, if you start a small business, this is just pro tip, been doing this for a long time. Pro tip, if you start a business and you actually have a margin, like big margin, get ready. You're about to have competition like you have never seen. I'm not kidding. You will get competitors very quickly, especially because if people see that, they see that you've got a big old mark on something, dude, they're all over that. And then of course, after those guys have shrunk the margins down a little bit and everybody's kind of squeaking by with their $4,000 a week store, then big corporate America comes in to basically clean up the whole thing, and then they just drag the prices down into nothing, which is why you're seeing like Wendy's closing down the franchises. My suspicion is those aren't franchise or aren't corporate stores, those are probably franchises. I haven't read full disclosure, I have not read that whole article, but my suspicion is it's probably franchises going, dude, we can't make any money off this. Like, there just isn't a margin to pay you guys these royalties and these leases and on and on and on, and pay it back all the money we borrowed from the bank to start the franchise, and on and on and on, right? I mean, some of you have been around for a while. You know my thoughts on franchises and how franchises work, and it's a clever idea, but you can get burned very quickly on franchises. Then people wonder why the cost of rent housing is so much. Yeah, it's just, again, when you flood the economy, you flood the area with a bunch of people, foreigners buying up all this stuff. And of course, they're not really even buying it, they're financing it, which is just worse. They're creating more dollars out of nothing to do this. And it's just this self-fulfilling prophecy. It becomes a frenzy of money printing, this orgy of money printing that exists. And for a handful of people, it works out really well for them for a while. It works out well, like a lot of things. It works out well until it doesn't, and that's kind of where we're approaching. And I think there is this delusion that's out there. There's still folks thinking they can bring all this back with cheap labor. Yeah, maybe, but the demand is dropping. You're losing this huge number of people. Boomers. I mean, boomers for a long time, the truth is that they were huge consumers. Boomers are not consuming anymore. Gen X has never been a particularly big... Gen Xers have been consumers, that's true, but not boomer level. I don't know too many Gen Xers that have that kind of money. Every Gen Xer, in fact, every Gen Xer I know has already made peace with the fact that they're not going to retire. Like every Gen Xer I know, they've pretty well made peace with it, unless they are able to make some kind of financial, like literally a financial miracle happen. They're kind of like, well, we're probably not going to retire, and if we do retire, it's going to be something like a quasi retirement. It's not going to be actual retirement. It's just going to be like, I'm going to work less. That's if you want to call it that. Do you think Jeffrey was really behind the orange money? No, I don't think so. That's. I mean, it'd be interesting, but that would definitely be one hell of a plot twist. But I'm not seeing that. I think that he didn't work enough. There was an interview with a dude. He was also a hedge fund manager. No, he was a real estate guy in Florida, and he was talking about Jeffrey. And he was saying, I've never met anybody like this. The dude never worked. Like all he did was party all the time. He never did any job. He never did any work. Like, yeah. He's like, every hedge fund manager ever met, pretty much all they do is work. Like, yeah, that's kind of how that works. Especially when you're dealing with those kinds of numbers. Like, I mean, you're pretty much always having to work. I mean, I've dealt with numbers that aren't even close to the billions that these guys are dealing with. And I know how much work it is just on my end. So, yeah, that makes sense to me. Hold on. Let's scroll back up here because I lost everybody. Pest removal, it's a job opportunity. Yeah, I mean, it can be, absolutely. Quote, pest removal. Yeah, that's another one too. Yes, pest removal. Now, the equalizer kind of thing, yeah. Where's your other in Texas? I don't know what that means, I'm sorry. Are you in the truck business, and how exactly? Yeah, I own a semi truck. I have for a long time, for many years now. I've been in the industry, and I take loads that I'm willing to take right now, because most everything doesn't pay anything. It's, in fact, I mean, if you want to have a trucking discussion, I'll touch on this. The rates now are getting so bad in the trucking sector that the guys running the trucks can no longer afford the maintenance on the trucks. So we're not talking about the guys we're not talking about the money that driver makes. We're not even bringing that into the equation. We're just talking about the truck maintenance itself, the actual cost to maintain the equipment, the truck and trailer, for example. So let's say you own your truck and trailer like I do. The cost to maintain this stuff is crazy, and it's getting worse. And then, of course, on top of that, the parts quality is getting worse at the same time. So the prices are going up, the quality is going down on the parts. So that means the more maintenance you're doing, you're having to do your maintenance more frequently now. And this is just run-of-the-mill maintenance. We're not talking about heavy maintenance like in-frames or engine rebuilds. We're not even talking about that kind of stuff. And these prices to stay in business, you can defer it for a while. There was a video I did, I don't know, like 3 weeks ago or so. I talked about deferred maintenance, and yeah, there used to be one of the biggest businesses in the United States was being a maintenance man. Now, I'm not talking about like necessarily like a building superintendent. That's a type of maintenance man. That's a specific niche or niche. But no, just being the guy who knew how to fix something and keep it running properly the whole time. That was a big business for years and years and years in the U.S. And people have forgotten this kind of stuff. And I mean, homeowners can tell stories. I mean, you guys know what I'm talking about. Some of you out there have been around. You know what I'm talking about. The deferred maintenance it's not being done on a lot of stuff, and so a lot of stuff is falling apart. The trucks are no exception. So these semi trucks that are out there on the road, that's why it's one of the reasons it isn't just the cheap recaps. The cheap recaps where you're seeing all the rubber all over the highway, that's a problem. But that's not the only thing that's causing that. It's the guys who run these things can no longer afford to maintain any of that equipment at all. And that's why you're seeing so many of them broken down on the side of the road, or when they get pulled in the inspection station, they got all kinds of inspection problems wrong with them because they're falling apart. My truck is no exception to this. I mean, my truck, my truck would absorb $50,000 in maintenance right now like a sponge, and it wouldn't. I mean, that's not new paint job. That's not new paint job. That's not new, dude. That's just going through and actually fixing. If I were to fix literally everything that was broken on it, or that didn't work properly, or that was aging and like needed to be replaced because it's near or at the end of its lifespan, dude, $50,000. Just it absorb it just like that, and that's on my truck, and I maintain my truck all the time, and I do a lot of the work myself. So, yeah, I mean that's just it. So I mean, we'll see what happens with the industry. I know that there was the article in Zero Hedge where the writer was talking about how the trucking industry will start coming back here in the next, 6-8 months because companies will start going under. Like, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how many people they keep importing, because they keep importing a lot of people to put in these trucks and nothing ever happens to them. You've probably, if you scrolled TikTok long enough, you probably saw that lady who drives a semi truck. I don't think she drives a flatbed. I think she pulls a box. But she was talking about some dude who didn't speak English, hit her truck. You guys probably all know who I'm talking about. It was all over TikTok. And she's like, yeah, I caught up with the guy, and then I looked him up, looked up the company, and the company, that exact same driver 1 month earlier had been pulled out of the truck and put out of service because he didn't speak a word of English, and he couldn't read English. So he can't read the signs, nothing. And he's a complete hazard on the road, and he doesn't know how to drive the truck, and on top of that. And he had a fake CDL, one of those non-domiciled fake CDL, whatever it is. You give somebody $1,000, they give you a CDL thing in California. And yeah, I mean, this is, and so she pointed this stuff out, like nothing happens to these guys. It depends. I mean, is anything going to happen to these guys? More importantly, is anything going to happen to the shippers and the brokers? Not to get too heavy and technical about it, but until the shippers themselves, companies like Amazon, by name, let me go ahead and just name one. When Amazon starts getting an actual fine for, say, I don't know, I mean, it needs to be relative to the size of the company. So for Amazon's case, $1 billion. So a $1 billion fine for having an illegal in the truck who can't speak English and pulling their trailer with their freight. Yeah, until that happens, and it's enforced. It has to be enforced as well. It can't be one of these things, Amazon got in trouble, and then we sweep it under the rug, just like we do with every other thing that, there's supposed to be all these arrests, but they never happen, right? I mean, so not to get too far afield, but that's the reality. What do you expect for us older Gen Z to do when trying to enter the home ownership market? I would tell anybody in Gen Z, this is just my opinion, you guys do whatever you want. I'm just going to give you my opinion on this. If you can find a piece of land that is not built on, somewhere maybe a little outside of town, or maybe even a lot outside of town, and you're able to get control of it, either get owner financing. Owner financing is, just be careful on your interest rate, be careful on what you agree to, and try to finance it for a short period of time, like 10 years or something like that, which sounds ridiculous, but it's really not. The payments aren't all that big a difference on a 10-year note. And with a fixed rate of interest with the owner, the guy who owns the property, if you can find something like that, you are better off. You are literally better off building something out there yourself or getting help to do it. It's kind of like what I have to do. I mean, eventually I'm going to end up having to do videos where I say, hey, if there's anybody out there who knows this guy or this guy, please let me know, because I need a concrete guy that's really good and isn't going to screw me on his price. Things like that. And then building those kinds of connections, because the reality is that the dollar economy is dead, and it's not going to come back anytime soon. So I think that Gen Z is going to have an interesting time of it going forward, because, and I'm not saying that they have it necessarily harder than any other generation. I'm not going to say that, because I don't think that's necessarily true. For me, when you talk, Gen X, Millennials, and Gen Z, believe it or not, those three generations are actually natural allies, whether they believe it or not. What are we doing here? They're actually natural allies, whether you guys believe it or not, because Gen Xers had to put up with all this boomerism nonsense when we were kids too. Being told that we're lazy and stupid and we just don't want to work. Dude, we all heard that. Like, that was a constant thing. So from Generation Boom. So no, if you can, and then you can figure out a way to build it yourself, drill your own well. In fact, there's actually a website called drillawell.com, and those guys they know everything there is to know about drilling holes in the earth and getting water out of the ground. And they even sell the equipment to do it. And it's not very expensive. It isn't as pricey as you might think. And it's something I have to do, actually. So there'll be videos eventually of me drilling holes in the ground and stuff and being covered in mud all day long. Those videos are forthcoming. I haven't decided if I want to put them on this channel or if I'm just going to create another one. I haven't really decided just yet. But if you can do that, it would be, number one, cheaper, and number two, you avoid this whole disaster of what's happening in, not just in real estate, but specifically in house building. Because again, if you scroll TikTok long enough, you're going to see that guy with that little finger, right? The little finger guy. It's on a little pointer, and he's the home inspector guy that keeps tapping stuff. He's like, yeah, see, look at all this stuff, how horrible everything is. Yeah, the construction is becoming just abysmal. And on top of that, again, I'm talking to Gen Z as well. So again, this applies to millennials. This applies to everybody, actually. But I'm just answering your question. Those are very valuable skills to have, building type skills. In my case, it's welding, because I'm doing a steel house. So I've got to do a lot of welding. I suck at welding. I'm sure you will see videos of me at some point failing at welding a lot, because I'm not very good at it. I can do it, but I suck at it. And so, that's why you have a grinder, right? Is to grind off all that slag, the inevitable slag and disaster. But those are invaluable skills to have. Like, one of the things that this isn't me trying to overtalk that, but if you notice that, like, your so-called your Depression era guys knew how to do all kinds of things, and the reason they knew how to do all kinds of things is because their currency collapsed. Did. I mean, the Depression era, it was a form of currency collapse. FDR, thank you. FDR screwed a lot of people by destroying the currency, and then collecting the gold, taking all the gold, all of the real currency out of the marketplace because people understood it. So those guys ended up having to get, by default, you end up having to get good at stuff. It's just like, it's like cooking. Eventually you will get sick of Cisco. Eventually people out there will get sick and tired of going to pick a restaurant. It really doesn't matter. It's basically all Cisco that's been microwaved and then served to you. And eventually you will get tired of that. And then you're going to like, you know what? I want to make something at home. I want to learn how to make something. And you will. You'll just start learning how to make some other cool stuff. You know, you'll go on a YT or onto TikTok and look up some of the recipes. Go look up chef reactions. Not the ones with the disposable pan, that one chick that's always putting together like these bizarre meals that I would never eat. For me, they aren't even a 0 out of 10. I would not eat it at all, you know, personally. But there are some really good ones out there, and just follow along some recipes. So those are just the skills. So there are completely empty buildings in Manhattan. Oh, I'm sure there are. They're all over the place. Again, I'm in Houston, Texas. What, the fourth, I want to say, I think Houston is the fourth largest, it's fourth or fifth largest metro in the United States. And dude, there's empty buildings everywhere. It really, I mean, it's like, there are buildings that have never had tenants in them that they built. I drive past these things all the time. I see them and I know where they are. I can take you to them. They have never had tenants in them ever since they were built. Somebody built them and nothing. There's nobody to go into those buildings. And yeah, that tells you that the commercial real estate is not only a bubble, it's a bubble that's already popped, and now we just have people being delusional. It's the people checking all the tickets at the horse race, right? They're on the ground looking for the winner that somebody threw away. That's all it really is at this point. It's rough starting up, it is. Done it. Let's see here. A, B, and C. B, no jobs exist anymore. No way to build capital nor gain experience. Yeah, it's tough. Like I said, this is why if you can apprentice, you know, somewhere, even if you do it for free, it's depending on who you're learning from, that can be worth more than the money. I mean, I don't know what to tell you on that. It's brutal to hear someone say something like that, but it really can be the case. I know I've worked for free a lot in my life just to be able to learn a few things, just to get something that I didn't know how to do. So, hold on here. Sounds just like a Democrat scam to me. I don't know what we're talking about. Sorry. I'm not a Democrat. I don't claim any political party, and I don't clan with anybody. Largely because I don't go in for any of that stuff anymore. I can talk politics, but I don't particularly. It's not my favorite topic. There's other topics that I think are more interesting to me. I will discuss politics, but it's usually from a political atheist perspective, meaning that I don't really care one way or the other. I just want to know how you're going to pay for all this delusional nonsense, and that's on any side on that. So partisan, both parties, yeah, they have. Yeah, they've been captured a long time ago. Let's see here. Peterbilt, yeah, 379. I have a Rat Rod 379. So it's a I don't know. Well, I mean, someday I'll send it. There's pictures of it online actually, but I do have. It's not a custom one. It's beat up, but it's a Rat Rod. And the engine is really, really awesome. The drivetrain is fantastic, but everything else is basically falling apart. I speak on privatization of departments as a next phase of our renter capitalist system. Yeah, if you want to call it privatization, I guess. I mean, for real, there's nothing really private about it if they're getting government money. Like for real. I mean, it's just this is a clever little game that gets. I'll just give you I'll weigh in on this a little bit. In terms of politics, it's a clever game that both sides have learned to play, and they play it very well. They're very good at getting people to believe that one side is screwing them. So everybody goes to that other side, and then that other side screws them. And then so they run to the other side. It's like, this is that back and forth thing. And they do this really well with the whole private versus public thing. No one ever bothers to stop and say, hold on a second, stop. Where is all this money coming from? Where are you getting all of this money from to do all of this? Because the math doesn't support any of this. Like the math that you're collecting in taxes doesn't support any of what you're paying for. No, it's being deficit financed. It's just being printed out of nothing, which is inflation. So it's like if you're getting inflationary money and you're getting money that's printed from nothing, is it really private? You tell me. I mean, I don't know that I would call that necessarily private. I don't necessarily call it public. I would call it basically just a big scam on both sides. Boomers burned unions down and bought stocks, corporations. But yeah, that's really a terrible situation, what happened there with that. For those who may not know what he's referring to on this is that in 1974, when everything switched over from a defined benefit pension program, it switched to a defined contribution program. When that happened, it shoved a bunch of people into the stock market who really had no business being in the stock market. It made them all into a bunch of gamblers. And the only way for those gambles to keep paying off is to constantly screw the next generation of workers coming on board and working at these companies. So these companies never bothered to train and replace people or anything. Like, I mean, like if you know that you're, like think about it, I mean, just like common sense. If you own a company, whoever you are, if you own a business and you have, let's say 100 employees and you know 50 of them are coming up in retirement in 10 years, 5-10 years, you know you need to replace 50 people, meaning that you're going to have to start 5 or 10 years ago. You bring in your new people, your interns and your apprentices, and you start bringing them up to speed so that way after 5 or 10 years, there's a seamless transition and the overall health of the company isn't damaged. That's common sense. That isn't even good business sense. That's common sense. That's just math. That's just how it works. And unfortunately, a bunch of boomers, who invested in these companies got shoved into this gambling thing with the whole, put all your money in the stock market. Well, the only way for those companies to make any money is to constantly keep screwing the next people coming on, which is why you couldn't even bring on new people now for what you're paying your senior people today because they can't afford it. The best example I could use would be Boeing. A guy I know, he's my son's great uncle, and he worked at Boeing. His peak salary when he left was like $158,000 a year. That was his peak salary. That was after like 43 years or 45 years of work. Peak salary. Even if you gave a new guy that exact same salary, he couldn't even live 1/3 of the life that guy had, because of the cost of living in that area, in the Seattle area, had gotten so far out of control by then. So yeah, I mean, this is all connected, and it's really terrible. What should be happening is that the stock market, real estate, all these markets should be collapsing. And then there should be a bunch of very poor, very angry boomers who should be bearing the brunt of all of this and screaming at their politicians and everything and demanding stuff I can't discuss on a live TikTok stream. That's what they should be demanding. And then their kids, can actually pick up the pieces and move on. But that's not what's happening. Instead, it's nope. Just keep shredding the next 3 generations of people to prop all this up. And then shred the culture on top of that by flooding the country with people who may or may not want to be here necessarily, and who may or may not want to be Americans. If they held shippers and receivers both responsible, the industry would change overnight. It would actually. You'd have to hold the shipper. You couldn't really hold the receiver responsible unless the receiver was the one who called the company to do to set up the load. Because if you're just a guy who's like, hey, you're going to send me my product, you wouldn't want to be held responsible for somebody else. You had no control over. But the shipper, on the other hand, they have direct control over that. They absolutely have control over that. But you have to make a person responsible. You can't use the corporate veil. Right now, all of these big companies and brokers, they all hide behind, well, we didn't know, nobody's responsible because it's one guy, and then this guy told this guy, and nobody's ever held responsible for anything. You have to actually do it the way that ATF does. For those of you who don't know how ATF works, if you've ever filled out a form to buy a pistola from a gun store or something like that, if you've ever had to do that, well, you sign a bunch of stuff that you personally are responsible and liable for, right? I'm not saying I agree with any of this fundamentally. I'm just pointing out that's the reality. Yeah, you're gonna have to start doing that with your shippers and your brokers. Start holding them responsible, because they actually can be held responsible, just like they hold drivers responsible. But if they did that, you're right. Then there would be some massive changes. I mean, it would be fast. It would be overnight, as you pointed out. It would be very quickly, where because all it would take is some guy who signed a form and he's like, "What do you mean I'm being fined $10,000?" Like, I didn't do any of this. Like, sorry, you signed this, right? Yes. Well, now companies then would they would have a hard time finding guys to work in the shipping department, which means they have to start paying a lot of money. Then they got to find competent people, and of course, competent people are really expensive. And especially since the competent people, they just burned all those competent people. Now they got to pay them a lot of money to come back because you insulted them on top of that. I know that if I went back to anything like that, I mean, like, dude, there wouldn't be an amount of money you could print that I would be willing to accept. I would want to see like actual physical groveling publicly from mega corporations before I would even consider helping them out. I'm not kidding about that, because for me it's personal. It's way beyond money for me. Like, there's just some things that have nothing to do with money for me. Way beyond that. Private carriers bought a lot of equipment. Yep, they all did. That's exactly right. Subcontractors. Let's see here. Sandpoint is easy. Certain areas. Sandpoint, Idaho? Haven't been there in a long time, actually. Always wanted to build my own house. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, so I would just say that for the younger people, that if you think about it, if you can do it, I would encourage it. And you can always, remember, you can always start small and then live there and then build something else while you're there. So that's what I'm having to do, actually. I'm building a shop first. A shop with a bathroom, basically, if you want to think of it like that. And then while you're there, it's much easier to build other stuff while you're there. Let's see here. Exactly, my dad was a depression baby, and as an adult, a machinist wouldn't pay anyone to fix something. Yeah, exactly. I mean, so if you can fix it yourself, you certainly try to. Fear for all the red tape and permits. Red tape and permits, please. Come on, stop. If you can get away with something without doing red tape or permits, I would encourage you to do it, actually. Let's see. Mamdani, I can't pronounce the dude's name, man. Mamdani, and Trump, two sides. Yeah, I saw that. I'm like, yeah, two peas in a pod. Just amazing how that works out. They both aren't too far apart. Thoughts on the AI bubble? I went over that earlier, but I mean, I do think it's a bubble. I don't think that AI is really being. I don't think AI is what it is, what people think it is. I think AI is just a very clever scapegoat for companies to try and get rid of, a bunch of jobs that they think that they can do without, and maybe for a little while they can. But as I pointed out, is that eventually you run out of the people who know how to do the maintenance, who know how to run things. And once you run out of those guys, well, they're not coming back. They're not coming back unless you give them a lot of money. You can try and bring a bunch of people in from other countries that are doing it cheaper, but this is the problem, is that many of them don't know what they're doing. This is why you have that whole thing in the job market. Job seekers, how many of you are out there right now? Sound off. That are like, you're looking for a job, you're trying to find a job, I can't find a job. And then, you get someone who says, hey, we saw your resume, come in for an interview. And then you show up at the interview and they're like, and they're agreeing with you the whole bit. They're like, okay, great, let's come back for a second interview. And then you go back for the second interview. Now you're into this, you're kind of committed. You're into this again. And they go back and like, and they're listening. And now there's another person there probably, listening, going, They're listening to your answers. You're answering, they're going along with all of that. And then let's go back for another one. Hey, could you put together a presentation of how you would fix this hypothetical problem? Let's come up with a hypothetical problem. Go ahead and solve this for us, and then come back and tell us how you would handle this. It's because the people there that were listening to you had no clue what they were doing. They had no idea what they were doing. They're completely incompetent. You're going to go back there and you're going to solve their problem for you. They're going to ghost you after that. They're not going to answer the phone anymore. They're going to completely ghost you. You just solved all of their problems because they didn't know what they were doing, because they just sort of got in there. I've been telling people, do not give these companies anything. They get one interview for free. Anything after that is consulting. You can pay $100,000 for an H-1B, so you can pay me $100,000 to solve a problem that you should have hired a competent person to solve in the first part. Pest removal. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the AI bubble. So I think AI is just that. It's artificial. It's just something that they're using as a clever excuse. It's a scapegoat. So hold on here. Thoughts on paying mortgage off versus early? It depends on your interest rate and depends on if you have any other debts, in my opinion. If you have no other debts, let's assume you did the Dave Ramsey thing, for example. I don't agree with Dave on a bunch of stuff, but I agree with the overall general idea of trying to stay out of debt. Let's say that you had no other debts of any kind and all you had was your mortgage, and your mortgage is like 3%. With inflation being what it is, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to pay it off, because inflation is well over 3%. But if let's say your mortgage is 10% or 9% or something like that, then yeah, you would want to probably pay that off, just because as soon as but if it doesn't make any sense to pay off like a 3% mortgage if you have a 25% car loan. That makes sense. So, but as far as like paying with dollars that are valueless, again, as long as the rate of inflation is higher than what your mortgage interest rate is, and as long as you feel comfortable that you have a steady income that you can keep paying that, then yeah, I would be inclined to let it go and just keep paying it. Plus, if you pay your house off, your insurance premiums probably go up, because insurance, taxes, inflation, and interest rates are all controlled by the exact same people. Every single time. It's controlled by the exact same people. All of it's controlled by the exact same people. So if you're not paying interest here, then you need to pay inflated insurance premiums here. If you're not paying inflated insurance premiums here, you got to pay higher interest rates on something else. If you're not paying higher interest rates, then you need to pay, more in taxes. Like this is how they keep doing this. How they keep spinning plates. And so, yeah, I mean, the fastest way to stop that wheel is with hard money. You guys knew I was going to say it sooner or later. That's the fastest way to stop that wheel. It's like putting, a steel shank right through the spokes on a wheel, and that's it. That's it. It brings it all to a halt very quickly and does an enormous amount of damage to their system. But I don't possess the skills capable of explaining how hard money works to people. I've spent years trying to do it, and I'm convinced I don't have that skill, or people don't want to learn it, because what they want is, in my view, I don't think people want a solution to the problem. They want to be a billionaire so that all the problems don't apply to them anymore. That's all they want. They don't really care about solving any problems, societal or otherwise. They don't care about solving it. They just want to have a bunch of money so that way the problem doesn't apply to them any longer. And the thing is that no, you're not, unless you are willing to go, I can't say it on TikTok, and I certainly can't say it on a live stream, but unless you are willing to do some fairly unsavory stuff on an island, and it isn't just, oh, she had a fake ID kind of stuff. No. I think we all know what was really going on. Unless you're willing to do that, you're probably not going to become a billionaire. You will very quickly be, look what they did to that kid with the Ferrari, what's his name? Diesel Maniac or something like that. I'm not picking on the guy. I just don't know him. I just happened to hear about what he was doing. And it's like, yeah, okay, so he trashed a Ferrari, and so now there's tax evasion also. Yeah, dude, that's all this is. That's who runs all this stuff. You're not allowed to do that kind of stuff. Look at Andrew Tate. I don't agree with necessarily with Tate on everything, but look at the reality. Look who they mess with. It's guys who have money and don't have a bunch of debt. Yeah, that's who will get messed with the most, because you're outside their system now. They can't control you, and especially if you're public about it. If you're like, the grandson or great grandson of J. Paul Getty, and you just got a couple $1 billion, and you don't ever do anything, you're never public, you're just reclusive, you just do whatever you want to do, no one's going to say anything to you. No one, even the island people aren't going to say anything to you about that. It's when you start doing things publicly and you start explaining, hey, you guys are all being screwed, you're being ripped off, what's happening to your money, what's happening. As soon as you do that, then yeah, see, you're now messing with their whole program. They're scamming people. They've got all these slaves, and you're telling people that they shouldn't be slaves any longer. And then the slaves start listening eventually, because most slaves love their slavery until they find out they're slaves. Then they go, hold on, I don't want to be a slave. I'd like to have some kind of choice in my life. And that's, at least in my estimation, kind of the sort of the pathology. It's kind of what happens to people, is that they're okay with, I mean, like most people are okay with being a slave as long as they have it better than somebody else. But as soon as you find out that, yeah, you're expendable, as all these people that are getting fired because of the so-called AI thing, they're finding out, yeah, you weren't any better than anybody else. In fact, you're just a pleb like everybody else, and we don't really care about you. So yeah, you know, you're gonna have to get your crap and get out, get your stuff boxed up and be gone with you. Yeah, so there you have it. Too bad that's the case, because the United States bet their entire economy on it. They certainly have. It's a weird thing too. With, you know, it's, what is it? It's like a handful, like a dozen companies that are just moving a couple $1 trillion around between themselves and the government, and they're calling that an economy. That isn't an economy. That's just a bunch of people. That's a shell game. That's all that is. That's just moving stuff around. That's not, it's a magic trick, and it's not even a very good magic trick, because there are lots of people out there, even complete nobody, pleb, internet people, random guys like me that can see right through it. So if you've got total nobodies like me that can see through all of this, imagine what the guys who actually do it for a living can see. They can see all this and they go, dude, this is such an obvious lie. Everything, all of this is such an obvious lie of what you're doing to people. So, yep, we'll see what happens with the U.S. economy when it comes to that, actually. Hold on here. Let's see here. Did you talk about the orange internet price falling? I haven't yet. I mean, it did fall. I mean, it dropped. It wouldn't surprise me if it drops back down to 80 or so. I don't personally buy it based upon the price that it's trading at in terms of dollars. This is just me personally. I buy based upon the amount of sats that I have, because for me, it's a hedge against long-term inflation. We'll see what happens. You know, I mean, hey, I mean, now do I think the orange internet money is going to solve everything? Not in and of itself, no. And I've been very clear about that. I've done actually several videos on that in the past. You have to have production. And right now, the US doesn't have a whole lot of production, because production got sent to other countries. So you'd have to have production. If the US could bring back its production, and I would argue not bring back its production, let me say it this way, just start being productive again. So in other words, don't bring back all the companies that left. Screw those guys. They can just stay gone. That'd be my opinion on that. Like, dude, I don't even care if these companies come back. You know, turn in your passports and leave. In fact, you can just stay gone. You already left, so just be gone with you. There are plenty of small businesses that are ready to take your place. There are lots of entrepreneurs in the US that can readily take your place right now, and they can start manufacturing stuff right here. We can start building up and start getting things going. You know, you don't wait around for perfection. You can't wait around for perfection. My God, I mean, think of it, you know, look at World War II. World War II, you know, you had pilots that didn't, you know, that only had, what was the average P-51 pilot training time? Was something like 250 hours or something like that? It wasn't very much. And they put those guys in like, you know, in fire-breathing Dragon airplanes, and then send, you know, with Merlin engines in them, and send them off to go into dogfights. So, you know, yeah, you can't wait around for things to be perfect. You just start doing stuff. But I don't think that the current state of leadership that exists now still lives in this delusional, you know, let's bring in a bunch of investment and trillions of dollars, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, you're just trying to save the same companies from going bankrupt, rather than saying, nope, they're too big to keep around. They're unhealthy. They got to go. And we're going to let some green shoots pop up. We're gonna do a forest fire, basically a controlled burn, so that way we can get the minerals back into the soil content and have a nice lush green forest grow up. That's probably what really should be happening. So, you know, but as far as orange money is concerned, we need to have production. And then once you have production, then it's much easier to get the money thing figured out. 3.3% mortgage. It's more worth it to leave the mortgage and worthless. Yeah, that's what I would kind of say, especially if you don't carry a lot of other debt. You know, if you don't have a whole lot of other debt, if that's really all you had, I mean, it's a judgment call, but I don't think you can be hurt. You know, you can't get burned too badly on something like that. That's just my opinion. If you're down around 3% or something like that, or even anything under like 4, real world inflation is something like 15. You know, I mean, that's like real world inflation. So if you're under that, and again, especially if you feel comfortable in your current ability to earn a living and have money coming in, and you're not being drowned out with all kinds of other debt, I'd be inclined to let it slide a little longer. Should be done this later fixer upper by. Should be done this later fixer upper by spring. Do you recommend buying other? I don't. Should. The phraseology is what I'm having a problem with. If you can buy a fixer up and pay cash for it, yeah, I mean, especially if it's something that you're going to live in and you're going to, I mean, and if you like it, and if then there you go. I think I understood the question. I love your econ thoughts. Do you think meaning in life is discovered or created? That's a good question. I would say a bit of both. I actually think that's probably a bit of both sides. So, it's sort of a choose your own adventure. At least that's how I've always seen it. I try not to get too far existentialist. I mean, on this channel, I can, but I don't typically do it. But I'll answer your question. Like, I think it's a bit of both. I think that, I mean, if there's a point of origin somewhere, and then you still have to discover as you go. I can't explain the moon's existence and why it just happens to be the exact same size from our point of view as the sun. That is definitely perplexing to think about it like that. Even Carl Sagan had a hard time with that one. So, I mean, I hope I answered the question, but I think it's a bit of both, personally. Whistling Diesel, that's who I was thinking of, yeah. Seems like a nice guy. I don't know anything about his channel or anything like that. All I know is that he blew up a Ferrari or something like that, and they were all upset about it. And that's why they said, oh no, tax evasion, blah, blah, blah. Whatever, man. I so don't care about tax evasion. Of all things that I would care about as a career criminal myself, dude, I so don't care about that. City's arrested for tax evasion, plans on moving to Montana now. Montana's a beautiful state. If you got the money to do it, I mean, dude, I would consider it, but it's gotten so expensive to live in Montana. That's a tough one. I've been through Montana a lot, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And there's a lot of places in Montana that I actually would move to and would like to live. I think would be interesting. Not that I don't love Texas. I love Texas. But it's really pretty up there. And it's or at least a place to go visit, on a more frequent basis. But yeah, I mean, it's just so pricey. And I'm not even talking about whitefish. I'm not even talking about the big money areas. Okay, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about even just out in the middle of nowhere. There's a lot of stuff's just too expensive, man. Let's see here. Hold on here. Sales tax was for $400,000 Ferrari that he destroyed. Is that what it was? Okay, yeah. Again, it's it's his $400,000. I think that's weird. On just on a personal level, I think that's weird. I'm not judging anybody, and I realize that from a viewership standpoint, he probably made more than $400,000 from people watching him blow it up or something like that. But I don't know. That just seems strange to me. But that's totally on me, right? I mean, I would say the same thing about blowing up a perfectly good Jeep, only because I think in terms of there's lots of people who could use something like that. I mean, not that you could really use a Ferrari for anything. It's probably the most impractical vehicle you could ever buy. But just my opinion. Again, that's all it is. And I'm in no way dissing the guy. I mean, he's clearly doing really well with whatever he's doing. So let's see here. Do you think Gen Z will rebel against having their future sold? What do you mean by rebel? That would be what I would ask. You mean a violent rebellion? I mean, I think that if you're talking about it in terms of the big V, maybe. I doubt it. I mean, there's so many people now that have been so demoralized, just from what I can tell. This is just my opinion again. There's so many people that have been so demoralized that have been told that they have to worship at the altar of government and law and order and all that kind of stuff. That tough one. I've been thrown out of every school I attended, and like thrown out of every school I attended when I was a youngster, because I saw the scam for what it was. And I would try and point it out to other people, like, this is a con, this whole thing is a scam. And yeah, they don't, you know, all of them continued along with it because they would get in trouble. And it's why I don't have any friends, for example. You know, when growing up, for example, as a kid, the other kids' parents would deliberately try to discourage them from, like, don't be around him. You know, he's a troublemaker. Like, yes, I'm a troublemaker, and not because I was stealing stuff. That wasn't it. It's just because, again, when you question authority, anybody's authority, the way that I did, especially, I still do it. I have not, you know, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. I still do it. I still question authority, no matter whose authority it is. I'll still question it. And when you do that, you know, teachers don't like it, parents don't like it, governments really don't like it, pigs absolutely do not like it at all. When you question that stuff, because again, most people's authority isn't really authority, it's credentials. It's something that they purchased or something that was bestowed upon them. That's it. They didn't really earn any authority. True authority is earned through usually lots of sacrifice, patience, and epic amounts of failure over and over and over and over and over. And that's where you'll develop authority. You develop a sense of authority where you really know something. All an expert is in any topic. I understand X is an unknown quantity and spurt is a drip under pressure. But no, and all an expert is just someone who has made every mistake possible in a particular field. And those mistakes are extremely valuable to the right person, to the right set of ears, to the right set of eyes. That experience is worth a lot. And so, and you can recognize it, you know, especially if you've been in the game a little while, you start recognizing what authority really looks like. You start recognizing people that actually have had lots of, like, really major failures, and they learn from them because they're not making the same mistakes over and over and over and over. They're making other mistakes, or that they're slightly different. Okay. You know, it's the Edison thing, right? You know, the filament, you know, you're rolling the filament to make it as thin as possible, and you're trying like 5,000 different times, but you're trying 5,000 different thicknesses of filament. It doesn't, so to the outside world, it doesn't look like you're doing anything. You're doing the same thing over and over. It's really not. You're making very small changes. Again, not to belabor the examples, but if you had Eddie Van Halen, the late Eddie Van Halen, playing guitar, no matter what he was doing, and then if you asked him, hey, you know, was there anything that you heard that was wrong that you did, he could probably tell you every little micro thing that he did that he thought was wrong when he was playing, but like nobody else would have even noticed it. Like nobody, even at that level of playing, probably would even notice that he did anything wrong. I'd be like, man, because it's so minute. But those tiny micro failures is where you gain a tremendous amount of wisdom. So it really depends. It depends on if Gen Z is willing to actually start questioning a lot of authority, but then also start to look for where they can find authority, because they're going to have to actually have someone leading them. They're not going to have a choice. Thank you. But they're not going to have much of a choice. You're going to, because you still rely on those people that came before you that are up to speed more in the movie that you're born into. Remember, you're born in the middle of a movie. What is the end objective between the government and Fed? Is the endless printing of trillions. Yeah, I mean, that's what they're doing right now. We'd love to see an end to it. I don't think it's going to happen, but we'll see what happens. Do you notice more MAGA waking up to the orange man? It's hard to say. I mean, like, for real. I mean, I'd like to think so, but it's tough for me to say because I see just as much propaganda on both sides, right? And it's why, like, on Bird's site, they just added that little feature where you can click on and find out the country of origin of where all this, and they found out that like half of these accounts are basically in India or Pakistan or something like that. They're basically shill accounts. They're just trolls. And so it's hard to gauge that. At least I'm having a hard time gauging that. I don't know what's happened. I definitely think that there has been a real cultural split that has really happened. I think there's been a fracture that has happened with people who want to, they want to have their country, but it's like, what does that mean? It's why, I've asked a few times, I've asked several times, like, we're gonna go out there and own the left. Okay, that's great. What does that look like on the other side of that? No one has any answers. What does it mean? What does any of this stuff mean? Do you have any goals? So if you say, let's make America great again, how do we know if we've made America great? At what point do we know that we finally achieved greatness? No one can answer that because it's a slogan. It's one of the things that I try to teach here. The difference between understanding just slogans and gimmicks and platitudes, things like that, where it's like, so for example purposes, make America great again. Okay, what does that mean? Let's rebuild America. Great, what does that mean? We're gonna make America awesome, okay. Like those are slogans. Those are Coke is it. Those are Nike, just do it. Those are slogans, those are corporate slogans. And a lot of people are really good at coming up with great slogans. They're not very good at defining what does that actually mean when you say better pizza, better ingredients, better pizza. What exactly does that mean? Let's define that, let's nail that down. Well, so that's why I would put that back and say, well, I don't know, because I hear a lot of slogans, I see a lot of gimmicks, and I hear a lot of platitudes, but no one's ever saying, okay, hold on. For instance, if I wanted to make America great, what would I consider that to be? I don't know. How about let's do private property and let's get rid of income taxes? How about let's get rid of income taxes, personal income taxes altogether, like categorically. No more withholdings, no more nothing. Let's just get rid of personal income taxes altogether. That helps everybody. The working class in particular gets helped the most. By percentage of income, it's not even close. It's not even close. Because the billionaire who gets the billionaire gets to keep an extra $300 million. Who cares? His lifestyle is not affected by that. In the day-to-day sense, his lifestyle isn't affected one iota, whether he keeps $300 million or spends it in taxes. However, the people who work, if they're keeping an extra, say, $30,000 a year, that's huge. That's gigantic. An extra imagine living on your gross income. How would your life be different if you lived on your gross income? Yeah, hello? Yeah, it's a lot of money. So your life would be changed pretty radically, wouldn't it? Yeah. So I would say, let's say part of the Make America Great Again idea, at least in my mind, would be let's get rid of personal income taxes altogether. How about let's not let foreign countries buy up property, particularly single family houses, as investments? That wouldn't be that difficult to do. That would just be simply saying, hey, listen, if it's owned by a person, it's homesteaded. If it's not owned by a person, that means it's owned by a corporation. That means it's taxed higher, period. And everybody else who owns it personally doesn't pay any property taxes whatsoever because it's your farmstead or your homestead or whatever you want to call it. That's pretty easy to do. That doesn't take much. So it's like, let's get some definition to this. How about let's not bring in any more visas for a while? How about you take that number down to 0 for a while, and let's deal with what we have right now. Those are very doable, implementable things that wouldn't take a whole lot of energy to do it. You wouldn't have, in fact, you could burn off the same amount of calories that you get from a Tic Tac by fixing that. So, collectively speaking. So I think it'd be pretty easy to do. Do I think that he's losing his base? I think he's losing a good chunk of his base from what I am seeing. Now, I don't know whether or not his supporters are getting more frantic and more cult-like, but I do think that some of the people that I've seen that were part of his base are definitely saying, dude, I can't go down this road anymore. We need to fix a few things here. Why are we sending our money to other countries? Countries that hate us. Why are we fighting wars for other countries that openly hate us? Yeah, there's just no point in doing that. I wonder how much people will have to have taken before they go for the high score. I don't know. That's a good question. As I joke, how big is your sock drawer? I totally agree. Never understood why it was so important for school to talk about the painter. Yeah, I mean, if that's what if you're referring to who I think you're referring to, yeah, I've always been perplexed by that as well. Like, just historically, I don't even necessarily agree with the philosophy at all necessarily, but from a historical standpoint, I've often wondered why it is that there's so much hatred and animosity to one guy that was a part of history and that was responsible for a whole bunch of stuff. That's true. But there's this huge black hole when it comes to the other historical figures that are out there that are just as bad, if not worse. And it just never gets discussed. From a historical standpoint, no, it should be pretty equal. It should be pretty even, at least in my opinion. I would want to know more about all of it, and then make up my own mind based on what I'm seeing, as opposed to, you know, just taking what somebody else is telling me as gospel. Do you like Star Trek, The Next Generation? If not, you should watch. I haven't seen that in a very long time. In a very, very long time. I was never a Trekkie. I would see it when if it was just on, like if a friend had it on or something like that, I would watch it. As with all of those types of shows, they're great for like exploring the ideas of a few things. You can't really take them too literal. It's like Stargate. You can't really take Stargate too literally. The TV series, not the movie. You have to look at the overarching idea of the ideas behind something of what they're dealing with. There's actually an episode of Stargate where they go to a planet and there's all the maintenance people who knew how to do the maintenance are no longer with them anymore. So nobody knows how to do anything. Hello. Yeah. What mistakes are worth it? All of them. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but they kind of are. You know, now if you're making the same mistake over and over and over and over and over and over and over, then it may not be worth it. But if you're just making honest mistakes due to ignorance, well, after you've made the mistake, then you're not really ignorant, are you? Yeah. Got 29 years expired, still not, or 29 years experience, still not an expert. Yeah, I mean, it takes time. It's the one thing that you can't really skip. You can't skip over time and service, and that's just how it is. So it would be cool if you could. Actually, there's an episode of Stargate that deals with that too. In fact, believe it or not, now that I think about it, this civilization they go to, nobody there knows how to do anything. What they're doing is they have the kids learn all of it, and then they just transfer the knowledge, and that's how they learn all this stuff, as opposed to actually experiencing what they're supposed. So what ends up happening is you get the so-called, you know, Jurassic Park Jeff Goldblum thing. You know, you learned all this stuff, and you decided you asked yourself if you could do something rather than if you should do something, because that's part of your experience, is whether or not you should do it, as opposed to, yes, you can do something, but should you do it? That's the sort of the philosophical part of it. It's the nuclear power argument that I make. There's an old video, like way back from, like, I don't know, 2 years ago or so, that I did it's on TikTok, where I talk about nuclear power. And I brought up the experience that nuclear power has shown us, and then how we have to kind of gauge that. I still get enormous amounts of hate on that. I get enormous amounts of hate on my criticism of nuclear power, and it isn't because I don't understand the physics of it. It isn't because I don't like the idea of having nuclear power. It's because, well, look at what we have right now. What do you think we're going to have? You out there watching this right now, assuming that you're paying, you know, close attention, what do you think we're headed towards right now? Interstellar or idiocracy? Now add nuclear power to that. Yeah. A lot of propaganda bots, it is, yes. It's why I decided to do videos, actually, is because no one questions whether or not I'm a bot or something like that. You know, like, well, okay, if I'm a bot, I'm the most advanced bot you've ever met. So there we go. Get rid of ISD. Yeah, I know, the school taxes. No kidding. The school taxes are crazy. That's what drives most of the property taxes, are just the insane amounts of money they take for schools. I have 10 years experience in my industry, yet I see a lot of drive to train from employers. 10 years in my industry. I see less of a drive to train from employers. Yeah, probably because they don't want to spend the money on it. That's the sad thing, is that the overall long-term health of a company There's the business of running a business, and I don't want to get bogged down in technicals, but I think some of you will understand this. There's a business of running a business, meaning that like you still have to have somebody who knows what they're doing to actually at the helm to do that, so that way you can continue to do your job and make money at your business. But at the same time, you can't take so much money out of the business for your own personal lifestyle that you end up crippling the business. And that's what a lot of people end up doing, is they start taking too much out of it as opposed to leaving it in there. So the long-term health of the business ends up suffering. Now, it's their business to do that with, but that's the thing. That's why you're supposed to have that balanced out by small business, by free enterprise. In other words, the employees who say, you know what, I see an opportunity here. This guy is taking so much money out of the company, I'm just gonna go start my own and compete against him. That's what you actually want. You want that. That's what keeps your checks and balances in the business sector. It doesn't work with big mega corporations that are printing money from nothing. It doesn't work for them, but it does work on the small level, which is why, of course, I'm always railing against these gigantic mega corporations, which are nothing more than governments unto themselves. My friend is in town of 300 people. They just built a $20 million addition to their local school. 300 people built they built a $20 million addition to a school? Dude, that must be in Texas. That must be a football stadium, right? I mean, they spare no expense on high school football stadiums down here. I've seen them. They're like professional football arenas. They're amazing how much money they spend on that stuff. If you had enough money to start your own business, would you? It depends on the business. I already have two. So I don't need another business on my plate, but if it depends on the business, I would try and stick with something kind of small, especially something that you can control. I mean, this is just run-of-the-mill basic information I would give you. Try to stay small and try to stay with something that you can control it. Try to avoid franchises to the best of your ability, because the franchises, they're usually the costs are just too high to keep up with, the royalties and so on. So I would try and discourage the franchises as much as I could. But I would say that there's plenty of opportunity. It's just a matter of what are you willing to do and what kind of cost structure, so you just have to be able to it is just to be profitable. So I'm giving you a deliberately vague answer because we don't have anything specific to discuss, but it depends on the type of business, and it depends on what kind of margin that you're going to make. And it depends on if it's something that you can control yourself and that you can do yourself. It doesn't mean you can't take on help. You can always take on help later on, but you have to be able to, I think you have to be a little more nimble right now, especially with what's going on. And it may have to be something that you do under the table without getting too deep into it on a live stream without being cut off. It may be something that you have to do other than, strictly speaking, legal. Is that vague enough? Let's see here. Hold on here. Let's try this out. Oh no, I guess not. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to trim in there. It says remove background noise or something like that. I don't know. There shouldn't be a whole lot of background noise. Got to do a whistling diesel. Yeah, no kidding. Exactly. Let's see here. I got arrested, tax evasion, U2, whistling diesel study, purchased land in Montana. Yeah, I imagine he did. If he's got the money to blow up a Ferrari, he's certainly got the money to blow up or to buy some land and build a small house or something like that in Montana, I would think. So, but anyway, those are most of the topics that I actually wanted to cover on today's live stream. And obviously I'll repost all this too. I posted over to on YT at Financial Physics. So if you missed anything, you can go back and rewatch it. But my throat is killing me today, which is why I sound as raspy as I do. I've had allergies for the last 3 weeks now, so I don't even usually get allergies, but for whatever reason I have allergies now. So anyway, so that's what I've got going on, and we'll see you guys maybe in a week or two, depending on how I feel, and we can do something else. We can talk about something else, or if you have topics, something that you want to talk about, you can always DM me. So in the meantime, guys, we'll see you. You're very welcome, and we'll see you next time, okay?